Hi there, my name is Catherine Potter. I am one of the assistants on the Sentient, which is a brand new newspaper from Algoma University. I would like to introduce you to the interview between Algoma University's new president, Dr. Richard Myers, and Robert Totiep. The interview you're about to see covers interesting subjects such as how post-secondary education can open a world of possibilities not only here, but around the world. How student newspapers can benefit present and future students coming into Algoma University and to become more involved with their schools, and exchange programs, how they're beneficial for all students regardless of where they live. Enjoy the show.
Good afternoon, Dr. Myers.
Good afternoon.
I have a couple of questions here I would like to ask you just to let the Algoma U students know about you.
Great.
My first question is, what would you like Algoma U students to know about you?
I'm someone who thinks one of the greatest privileges you can have is to spend your life at a university. I've been either a student or a professor or an administrator for what is it? It's probably about close to 35 years now. And I think having the opportunity to spend your life learning, and especially to spend your life with younger people who are keen to learn, it's an enormous privilege, and I find it very energizing.
Good to know. So what universities have you attended?
Well, I attended the University of Toronto to do most of my schooling. Did spend a little time studying in New York City, studied ancient Greek in New York City, which was something important to my program. And then I had the good fortune to be able to spend a year in Europe while I was doing my PhD thesis. I wrote most of it in Paris, but I also had the opportunity to spend 4 months in Freiburg in Germany. And that's where I first developed a real appreciation for the value of studying abroad, the value of taking time when you're a student to learn something about the rest of the world, and it's given me a lifelong taste for other cultures, other languages, and a real desire to encourage students to take advantage of that as well.
Oh, so you've studied all over the world, right?
Well, I studied all over the world. Yeah, I guess I spent part of my PhD time in Paris and in Germany. I did spend a semester in Japan. I spent a semester at a university in China. Had opportunities to study in New York City for a couple of summers. So yeah, lots of exciting chances to see the rest of the world.
Okay, so after graduation, where did life take you?
After my graduation from my bachelor's program, I essentially just continued straight through. As I said earlier on, I was one of those people who just, when I arrived at university, I thought, this is fantastic, I love it here. And I guess I never really left. I'm not sure that I spent any considerable time outside of the university environment once I entered.
What inspired you to apply for the presidency of Algoma University?
Well, I was contacted about it. I had spent some time as a university administrator. I'd been a vice president at another university for 7 years. And when my term finished, I thought, you know what, I'd just like to go back and teach because I like teaching. And I was doing that very happily, and then the people who were looking for a president here contacted me, I think because they were looking for someone who was familiar with small universities, who was very student-friendly, and who had a real sense of the value of an undergraduate university that focuses on students doing their first degree. So they scouted me out. I wasn't looking for a job, and I'd never been here. I didn't really know anything about Algoma. And I think I originally probably would have said, well, I'm not really interested in that, but as they described the place to me, I thought, well, it does sound very much like the place where I was, and it met all of those criteria in terms of the kind of place that I like. But what I saw about this university was an opportunity to do interesting things that other places aren't doing. Generally, I think it's fair to say that universities tend to be very resistant to change. I tend to be a kind of ideas person, and I think that universities can do a lot of things a lot better than they do. And sometimes it's a little frustrating when you can't see the sort of change that you know would be really good. I had the distinct impression from talking to the people who were organizing the search for the presidency here that this was an institution that, for a variety of reasons, might actually be able to do some of the exciting things that I think universities ought to do, but generally they don't. One of them, of course, is study abroad. And you may know that part of what I've been saying to people is that while every university in the country knows that in the 21st century students in Canada need to have more international experience, nobody's actually doing it. We are dead last among the advanced economies in terms of having our students live abroad. And I think it's a real problem in our education because it's wonderful having you here. You grew up in Ghana. But I think if you grow up in Canada or in the United States, you grow up with a very strange view of the world. You think that you're quite privileged because you speak the language that the rest of the world is trying to learn. You're part of the dominant culture, particularly in terms of pop culture and so on. And I think it gives you a very strange view of how to interact with the rest of the world. I really think that an important part of the education of any Canadian in the future is going to be to live somewhere, someplace, where you are a minority and you don't speak the language of the people around you and you don't look like the people around you or something like that. I think until you live in that kind of situation, you don't have the kind of cultural intelligence to deal with people from the rest of the world because you've got these prejudices that, well, I speak the world's most important language and I come from the world's richest country and the UN used to tell us that Canada's the greatest country in the world, and we believe that far too much.
It's important a global education where you learn from every country and add this little bits to improve upon yourself, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And I think part of the problem is that when Canadian students do have a little bit of international contact, they almost always carry with them the attitude that, well, we're the superior place and we're going up, we're going to help you. And as I say, I think it's not until you've been in a situation where everybody around you's talking and you can't understand them, or you try to speak their language and you talk like a baby and they talk like adults, that's when you start to realize that, yeah, I don't necessarily come from the best and the brightest and most dominant culture in the world. And there are things that I should be learning from other people. It teaches you a kind of humility. For instance, one of the things that I always, that I picked up, I guess, from the time that I spent abroad, if you're living in a country where you don't speak the language, when you first get there, you think everybody's saying, and you can never understand them.
Yeah.
And of course, once you've been there for a while and you work on the language, eventually, no, you can understand them. You knew all those words, you just didn't have the capacity to process it. You thought they were speaking so fast, but they were just speaking at a normal speed. Now, what that gives you when you go back to your own country is the capacity to put yourself in the shoes of, if you have someone who's just come here from Germany or France or Ghana or wherever, and English is not their language, then you know enough to stop and speak clearly, articulate properly, slow down a little bit. That's just a very small, but I think a very important example of how, having been in the shoes of those people, you now, can work with others more effectively because you know what it's like to be a visitor from somewhere else.
Yeah. So how do you feel you have adjusted to your role as president of Algoma U?
It has been fun from the very first minute. There is so much that you can do, and being the president of a small university is way more fun than being the president of, you know, the University of Toronto or York or someplace like that. I think if you're a president at a very large institution, you probably spend most of the day working with other administrators, you know, in some giant administration building, right? But what's great about a place like this is that your day has so much variety, and you work with faculty, with students, with